Welcome to the channel. If you're returning, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the Kawasaki W800, the best modern retro you may not have seen in person. Features that you might not have seen on other modern retros, especially in the totality, are as follows. The first, chrome fenders. Real chromed steel fenders. They're not plastic, they're not aluminum, they're not composite, they are steel. There's a lot of metal on these bikes, which adds to the authenticity of the recreation of the Kawasaki W1 from the 60s, as well as getting a certain ride quality to it because of the extra weight added by steel. They also have steel side covers and gas tanks, which oftentimes are made out of different materials, most often plastics in the modern age, just because I think it's easier and more cost effective for the companies to do it that way. It also has a tubular steel frame, which again, I understand it adds weight, but it adds to that authenticity of how the older bikes were. There is some added weight capacity in other components on the motorcycles with some modern electronics, but the feel of the motorcycle, how it recreates riding a bike from the 60s, early 70s, is what was the target for Kawasaki to hit. And they hit it beautifully. I think they hit that better than any other modern retro motorcycle. There's arguments that a modern retro should be, a fire-breathing motorcycle in the clothing or disguise of an older bike like the Kawasaki Z900 RS. The W wasn't intended for that. It was meant to literally drag you back nostalgically to the point where that was the standard motorcycle. The horsepower is right, the torque's right, the technology is mostly correct. Of course, not incandescent lights on it, they're LED. It's got ABS, it's got a slipper clutch, it's got some other doodads. It's got a little LED screen that does time, your odometer and your tripometer. So there are some modern conveniences there, specifically depending on the year that you get. If it's a W650, could be carbureted, might have a drum brake. The W800 series are all fuel injected and all disc brakes all around, which enable, disable the kickstart, but enable things like, cold starting is really easy. You don't have to mess with a choke and things like that. Two clocks, one for speed and the other RPM. Those are both analog clocks. There is, like I said, that tiny little digital display. I think it's actually LED that just would go through there and say, this is your tripometer, this is the time of day, and this is your odometer. The next thing, and I just cannot stress this enough at how critical this is to recreate that old vintage motorcycle feel, a functional, intact center stand. You can drop it on center stand super easy. It's absolutely an amazing thing to have a center stand. Oftentimes I see on modern bikes it's an add-on, it's an aftermarket add-on, or it's a order from the factory with the center stand. It's not standard on motorcycles, and this is really frustrating to me. I understand in the cruiser market that side stand, or the contraption that Harley Davidson has so it won't roll forward on their it's not a kickstand, is a different term for it, but I understand that it's really hard to get a bike that low on a center stand that has functional value, especially with the weight of some of those bikes. But for a standard motorcycle that's specifically targeted at retro, not having a center stand is a huge misstep in my humble opinion. The other thing, it's got a true parallel twin. And what I mean by true parallel twin is that the pistons move together. So it's a 360-degree crank. They alternate firing order, but it is a true parallel twin where the pistons are parallel to each other through the entire cycle. Most twins these days, much to my dismay, are 270-degree crank. And I've heard a lot of people say they love the sound of that, but that sound has become so very common. People say it's smoother, people say it's better, people say a whole bunch of things. But again, if you're going to recreate the parallel twins of the 60s and 70s, even as far back as the 50s, a 360-degree crank with the pea shooter exhaust is the exact sound, feel, and even a little vibration points through there that you 100% would expect on a vintage motorcycle. The last thing, as far as metalwork goes, true spoked wheels. So you can adapt spoked wheels to be tubeless. You need to, get the special lining inside there so that you don't have air leaking out through the spokes. However, having a true spoked wheel just goes to that authenticity again, which makes these just absolutely wonderful motorcycles. There have been people who have complained that it's much, much harder to patch a tube than it is to do a tubeless tire patch job, with the, stuffing something in the hole and with a little bit of epoxy and then cutting it off and then re-inflating the tire. I agree. However, the authenticity says you would have had a tubed tire back then. And the last thing that I think is really, really cool, in my opinion, is that the manufacturer name isn't splattered all over the motorcycle. Like you look at Triumph and it's splattered everywhere. The Union Jack is splattered everywhere, which is really kind of funny to me because the modern Triumphs are made in Thailand. They're not made in England. The Union Jack being on it is just, it's kind of like the American flag being, put on Harley Davidsons that are coming out of Thailand as well. I get it. The heritage of the brand is from the UK, but the new bikes have very little to do with the original Triumphs that were made in the UK, just like Royal Enfield's made in India. Granted, same company, and they've been functioning, but they're not the heritage coming out of the UK since they moved operations to India and the UK manufacturing closed. Norton's been back, I don't know, half dozen times. BSA has come back, reintroduced the Gold Star, but the authenticity there might be really, really great. It's a single-cylinder thumper, counterbalance, so it should not have the regular thumper feel that you'd expect. But as far as recreating that era and doing it authentically, I think Kawasaki absolutely just nails it right on the head. Whether you're looking at a used Kawasaki W650 series, or you're looking at a used or new, in the States anyways, you can still get them new. In parts of Europe, you can still get them in new W800 series. It will have changes, like I said, the modern technology, the LED lighting, the ABS brakes, the slipper clutch, and and the LED lighting. I think I already said LED lighting, so I'll just say it one more time, LED lighting. Isn't perfectly authentic, but the way it feels to ride the Kawasaki W800, it's just absolutely amazing. I keep describing it as a very polite motorcycle, and if I compare it to equestrian terms, I'm not the guy that is going to go out there and break a horse in. I'm not the guy who's going to go on a trail ride, a Western trail ride, and go with a very spirited horse. I want a very polite horse that is real easy to control, real easy to manage, very predictable in its actions. And that's how I feel about the Kawasaki W800. It performs exactly the way I expect it to. It does everything the way I expect it to. I did put more modern tires on it just to get a bit more grip, and I'm ecstatic about that. But swapping out tires, there are those who are very literal in their interpretation of a modern retro, that it should have period correct tread pattern. And for me, I'll trade, the grip. Instead of looking correct, oh, those tires are wrong, but I've got grip. I'll take that all day long, just because I really like my connection to the road to be super predictable as well. Thank you everyone for staying to the end of the video that you did. If you did that, please think about liking and subscribing. We will catch you soon with a new video shortly. The autumn season is wrapping to a close here in Vermont, so we'll see what we can do to get some interesting videos that don't necessarily include a destination ride. The ride that's captured today went out to Canaan, Vermont, with a quick trip over to New Hampshire, just on the other side of the Connecticut River. But it was a lovely 4.5-hour run, including lunch. My best friend here in Vermont, Pete, he went on the ride with me. He's on the Sportster, which he restored himself. It's I believe an 88. Started out its life as a 883 and ended up its life as a 1200. So beautiful machine there. I hope that everyone has a terrific day. Keep the shiny side up and the rubber side down. Keep it wheel.